Look over here, this red color one. See, this is a brain and this is a spinal cord. See, this whole thing is a brain. This red part running till your, if you touch your back, you will feel along, a very hard structure inside that. So that's a backbone, and inside a backbone you will have this spinal cord. Okay, and inside skull you will have a brain. Okay, so they are highly protected with the bony structures. So actually brain is protected by skull, and spinal cord is protected by backbone. Spinal cord is there inside the backbone, actually very delicate structure. Okay, so these red color things, they are the central nervous system. Okay, so this is this one, and this long pipe running directly from a brain, all through your back, this is a spinal cord. So now these yellow color wires you can see, there are certain wires arising from the spinal cord, and they run all through your hands, skin, everywhere, right? So all the nerves that are arising, all the wires that are arising from spinal cord, they are called as, see here you have more wires. So all these wires are called spinal nerves, and the nerves that arise from brain are called as cranial nerves. So they are the main nerves, and again those nerves can be having branches. Okay, so just like you have a main artery, right? So main artery has got so many branches, just like that. So there are 31 spinal nerves and 12 cranial nerves, right? So each nerve can be branched out to sub nerves, where they are actually connected to a sense organ and detect, they carry the information from the sense organs. Okay, so this is how, guys. So let me see one more visual here. You can see this visual. Okay, so the brain, these are actually eyes. So nerves arising from brain, they are the cranial nerves. Cerebrum, cerebellum, and all different parts of the brain actually. Okay, and spinal cord. So this yellow, inside the long yellow one is a spinal cord. So cranial nerves, 12 pairs. So all the nerves arising from brain, here the upper part of the body, cranial nerves. And all the nerves arising from your spinal cord is a spinal nerves. So how many nerves are there inside our body? Millions and millions of nerves are there. Okay, so they are very important. The very fine cells, actually very delicate cells, very fine cells. Okay, so let us understand the structure of neuron. How does it look like? So very simple, guys. So it's not like normal cells. Whenever we designate a cell, whenever we have to represent a cell, we simply put round, circles, and we say this is a cell. Here you have a nucleus, cell organelles, and etc. Right? But the shape of the neuron is very different. So observe here. See, if you can observe, you have a long pipe-like structure where they will end here. Okay, and these are small branches, extensive branches. Here is a nucleus. Okay, so very rough diagram I have drawn here actually. So you have cuts here, right? Yeah. Now let me talk about the parts and this entire part. So this entire part is there, that is called as cell body. Cell body can also be called with the name Cyton. Okay, so Cyton. And now this long pipe-like structure is there, that is called as axon. Okay, so axon. And this ending, so this is what your nerve ending. And what is most important part is these branches, these hair-like branches, which are called dendrites. So these are dendrites, very important. So you have these hairy branches, dendrites. Okay, so now look, let's understand which part does what work. So here dendrites are the one which actually detects stimuli and passes information or passes Here, you know what? How does the information passed through the nerve? It is passed in the form of electricity. You know, there is electricity inside our body, electricity running inside our body. What is that electricity? Nothing but information. Okay, say for example, this neuron has detected danger for a skin. Say my skin has touched the fire. So now there is a nerve connection here. Say suppose in this area, there is a fire touch on my skin. So the neurons which are there here, the dendrites which are there here, they detect the stimuli, they detect the danger, and they carry that information to my brain. And then brain thinks what has to be done, and brain again sends information through another neuron. Okay, so that neuron would be connected to my muscle. So that neuron tells my muscle cell, oh stupid fellow, some danger is there, take out your hand. So my muscle works. Okay, my muscle comes into the action, and then I would be taking out my hand. So this much process happens within the fraction of seconds. Okay, right? So the one who is actually detecting the information, and that information gets passed through the axon, that detection is majorly done by this dendrite. Okay, so what is the use of dendrites here? So they detect stimuli and passes information. In biology language, we don't use the word information. So instead of information, I use the word impulse. So you must have heard your teacher saying nerve impulse, right? Nerve impulse or just impulse is same. It is nothing but the information. Whatever the information that the nerve is carrying, that itself is called with the word impulse or nerve impulse. Okay, so dendrite detects the stimuli and passes information to axon. So this is the duty of dendrite, guys. Through the axon, the information is passed, and now it reaches to the nerve ending. So this is how. Okay, so from hairy structure, that is from dendrite, the information is passed to the axon, and from axon to the nerve ending. Okay, and this nerve ending can get connected directly to your brain or spinal cord. The nerve can be longer enough that a single nerve can have a connection right from your hand to your brain, or right from your leg to your spinal cord. A single nerve sometimes can be enough to take the information. Okay, but every time the nerves are not so long, there won't be a single nerve taking the information. Sometimes there are certain nerves, single nerve itself takes the information directly to the brain and spinal cord. Sometimes there are a chain of nerves. Okay, so you will observe chains of nerves where the information have to pass from one nerve to another, okay, so that is also very important. This is what you see most of the time in your body. Okay, so suppose this is one nerve. Okay, so these are the dendrites. Okay, roughly I am just drawing. So this is a nerve ending, and here you have another nerve. Okay, so these are the nerve ending, dendrites and nerve ending. Okay, say you have another neuron here, dendrite, right, nerve ending. Say here this is the dendrite connected to receptors. Some receptors in some sense organ. So the receptors have detected the stimuli, they have passed on to the dendrite. So now dendrite is carrying the information. So it has carried, the information has come, and it is now there. And how is the information passing? Information is passed in the form of electricity. So that is called as impulse. Okay, so now the impulse has come and it has reached. Now there is no path to pass this information on to a next neuron, isn't it? Because there is a gap. So you have studied in the electricity, if the circuit is broken, if there is no closed path, the electricity passage will get stopped, isn't it? So now see, how does the information have to pass from this fellow to this fellow? right? So somehow the information must reach from nerve ending of one neuron to dendrite of another neuron. Okay, from here to here the information have to reach. Okay, but there is no pathway, there is no connection, there is no closed circuit to pass that information, because information is passing over in the form of electricity. Ma'am, how ma'am it gets converted into electricity, that you will study in the higher classes. Okay, now it is not necessary, just understand the information will flow like an electricity. Okay, like an electricity, not exactly the electricity, like an electricity. Okay, fine. So now here actually what happens is, before knowing what happens here, understand this gap between a nerve ending of one neuron and dendrite of another neuron is called as synapse. So very important. So this gap is called as synapse. So what is synapse? It is a gap between the neurons. Gap between the neurons. Okay, so that means it is a gap between, this is a short form of writing between. Okay, so gap between nerve ending of one neuron and dendrite of another neuron. Dendrite of another neuron. So that gap is called a synapse. So how is the information is passed between the synapse? That is a very important question. So they will ask you in the exam, what happens in synapse, or how is the information is crossed over through the synapse, whatever it is. Okay, so that means if this is one neuron, okay, so this is another neuron, right? So these are the dendrites. Yeah, so now from this neuron the information have to pass to another neuron. Say now the information, there is a receptor here, suppose. Okay, so the electricity is passing, right? So let me change the color of the pen here. So the receptor has detected the stimuli, and that stimuli is passing over through the dendrite. From dendrite it has reached the cell body. It's a nucleus, guys. Every cell has to have nucleus, no? So this is the nucleus, and it is going through the axon. Through the axon the electricity is passing here and it is staying at this nerve ending. Now it should reach to the dendrite of another neuron, right? But since the information is passed in the form of electricity, so there is a gap, so there is a broken network. So what happens here is, there are some chemicals here called neurotransmitters. The moment electricity or impulse has come here, so nerve ending releases. Okay, so this will release certain chemicals called neurotransmitters. So these are very important. So there are certain chemicals, neurotransmitters. Okay, so it is these neurotransmitter carry information, or carry, yeah, you can say information. Carry information to dendrite of another neuron. Dendrite of another neuron. Okay, so this is what happens. So once the neurotransmitter reaches the dendrite of another neuron, automatically here the information has converted to impulse. Again it has converted to impulse, and now it is moving in the form of impulse only. Okay, so this is what happens in between the gap, guys. Okay, right? So receptors are detecting stimuli, the impulse is going on, it reaches the nerve ending. There the nerve ending of one neuron is there, no, that will start releasing chemicals here, and those chemicals are carrying the information to the dendrite. Chemicals can easily move on, isn't it, right? So chemicals, they move on, they reach the dendrite, and there they are like giving the information. Okay, see, take the information and pass it on, they say. So again, the moment they reach the dendrite, the impulse gets passed over through the another neuron. Okay, so we will see a beautiful visual on this. So this is a nerve ending of one neuron, dendrite of another neuron. Okay, see how the chemicals, these are the chemicals. Okay, so this is what the neurotransmitters we say. Okay, so this is how the informations are delivered from one neuron to another neuron. So they are the carriers of information here. Okay, so the electric impulse stops here. So the nerve ending releases some chemicals. Those chemicals will carry that impulse towards the dendrite of another neuron. So this is what happens in between the synapse, guys. See, such a beautiful visual, isn't it? So all these are neurotransmitters which are carrying the information from one neuron to another neuron. Guys, now let us see how as a whole neurons, how they perform their duty. Okay, their duty is to carry the information. Say, look at here, the bright light. See here, the bright light is moving, right? Say this is the axon. Nerve ending, from nerve ending the information has reached to the dendrite, and again the light is moving on, that's nothing but the impulse or the information. Okay, see, it has moved. This is how, from one neuron to another neuron the information will get passed on. See, you can see the neuron, the whole neuron structure, how it looks. See the hairy like dendrites, and here you have a nucleus, Cyton, and look at here, this is your axon. So axon is protected by this sheet called myelin sheet here. So this is called myelin sheet. You will study about this in the higher classes. Now it is not necessary, and these are the nerve endings. Okay, so this is the actual structure of neuron, exactly the way it looks inside our body. Okay. So what are reflex actions here? Sudden actions, right? Sudden actions, or you can say immediate response. Immediate, without even thinking, your body will give response, isn't it? So immediate response by a body is called reflex actions, right? And these reflex actions, so very important point that I am writing here. So these reflex actions are there, no? So they are controlled and managed by spinal cord, not the brain. Okay, so that is more important here. So they are controlled by, right? So controlled and managed by the so-called spinal cord. Okay, so all the sudden actions, majority of the sudden actions that our body does during emergency times are controlled by, are managed by, are processed by our spinal cord. Okay, so these actions we are going to study in a detailed way. Okay, so what actually happens, how the spinal cord is controlling, why is the spinal cord controlling these actions, everything we will discuss in a detailed way by taking one example that is mentioned in your NCERT, that is when you touch a hot cup of coffee, how actually your hand is coming back all of a sudden is what we are going to discuss in a detailed way. Okay, guys, I want you all also open your NCERT textbook. Look at figure number 6.2. Okay, see here a hand touching a hot cup of coffee here. So that is the example we are going to learn. Okay, see, look at, this is your fingers, okay, touched a hot cup of coffee. So obviously the thigmoreceptors, okay, so what kind of receptors you will find on a skin? Thigmoreceptors. So the thigmoreceptors are detecting a stimuli. Okay, so initially what is happening? So thigmoreceptors, I'll just write receptors only. Okay, so these thigmoreceptors What are they doing? They are detecting stimuli. Okay, so they detect stimuli. They detect stimuli and the receptors are connected to a particular neuron. Look at this neuron. Okay, so this neuron, there is a long neuron here which is directly connected to spinal cord. So this whole structure is a spinal cord. Okay, so the thigmoreceptors are sending that stimuli to a neuron which is connected to spinal cord, and that neuron is called as sensory neuron. So the information is passing from receptors to sensory neuron. Okay, guys, let me make you understand one more point here. There are three types of neurons here. Okay, so depending on the function, depending on how they carry information, there are three types of neuron. Number one, sensory neuron. Okay, fine. So what does this sensory neuron do? They always take information or impulse. Okay, so nerve impulse or information, anything is fine. So they take information from receptors to your central nervous system. So what organs come under central nervous system? Brain comes under central nervous system, or spinal cord comes under central nervous system, isn't it? So they always are connected to receptors. Okay, so whatever may be the type of a receptor, you know, in eye you have photoreceptors, on skin you have thigmoreceptors, right? On nose you have olfactory receptors, in tongue you have gustatory receptors. So it is these sensory neurons which are actually directly connected to these receptors. The moment the receptors detect the stimuli, they pass the information to sensory neuron. So it is that sensory neuron which is taking the information to central nervous system. It can be a brain and it can be a spinal cord. Okay, so that is the work of sensory neurons. So they take information from outside world to your brain or spinal cord. Okay, so they detect the information actually from whom? From receptors. They are getting information from receptors. Okay, so that is the duty of sensory neurons. Okay, they are there all over your body. Okay, yes. And second one, motor neuron. And don't expect the information coming from brain and spinal cord through the same neuron. Sensory neuron work is only to take that input, whatever the input the body is experiencing, no, that input it will take towards brain or spinal cord. Now the output, the brain will think what has to be done, or spinal cord will think what has to be done whenever that information reaches. Okay, then the output or response is sent through another neuron, not through the same neuron through which the information has arrived. Okay, so now the output information, okay, so the response is sent back through motor neuron always. Okay, so now what does the motor neuron do? It will take impulse from central nervous system to organs. Okay, organs, usually the organs which are supposed to respond, okay, the organs which are supposed to protect our body, usually the muscles. Okay, so the muscles are the one which acts here. Say your hand is touching a hot cup of coffee, so your hand must come up, isn't it? So what should act here? The muscle which is there in a hand must act here. Okay, so that should give the response, right? So that should make your hand to come back. So here the impulse is sent from central nervous system to organs. So usually the muscles, these are called effector organs. Effector organs. Okay, so the organs which gives out the response, which gives out the output, okay, from a body, from central nervous system, is what we call effector organ, and most of the times that effector organ is one or the other sort of muscles. Okay, so fine. And you have another type of neuron, so that is relay neuron. Okay, so you have relay neuron, guys. So what is a relay neuron does? It connects. Okay, sometimes it acts as a connecting bridge. It acts as connecting bridge between between sensory neuron and motor neuron. Okay, so it connects sensory neuron and motor neuron. And also it actually, whenever the spinal cord is giving all these response, you know, the spinal cord is supposed to send the information to brain also. So the moment the spinal cord has acted here, it came into the picture, it has protected the body. For the action, spinal cord may be responsible. Okay, spinal cord has done all the work here, it has managed all the work, it has managed the danger, okay, to come out of the danger. But its duty is to give information to the brain. Brain is the main manager, isn't it? So brain is like a doctor, spinal cord is like a head nurse. Okay, see, most of the cases in the hospital is managed by head nurse. But what is the duty of a head nurse? Head nurse is supposed to send the information to the doctor. When doctor comes, head nurse will tell, oh, this patient has come, I have given this medicine, you know, this patient has come, I have given this treatment. So everything is ultimately, she has to give whatever she has done to a report it to a doctor, isn't it? Similarly, though the spinal cord has suddenly acted during emergency times, it is supposed to give whatever the work it has done to, you know, brain. It has to send to a brain. And how does the information is sent to a brain? This relay neuron does that work. Look at here, there is a connection. So this is a sensory neuron and this one is a motor neuron, right? So the second red color pipe is there, no? So this is a motor neuron. So between sensory neuron and motor neuron, there is a connecting bridge, right? So that is a relay neuron. Later this relay neuron will send the information. It will take the information to brain also. So it will tell, oh, the situation has come, spinal cord has given this response, so spinal cord acted at time. Okay, so whatever the spinal cord has done the work, everything it will report to brain. Okay, so that is the work of relay neuron here. Okay, so guys, so first thing is it acts as a connecting bridge between sensory neuron and motor neuron, and second thing is it also sends information. Okay, so it delivers information from spinal cord to brain. Okay, so this is like that mediator who tells everything to, who reports everything to brain. Okay, right? So that is what the mechanism that happens here. So now let us come back to this situation. So whatever the stimuli your hand has detected, that means your receptors have detected, that is sent to the sensory neuron. So sensory neuron is the one which is connecting to receptor and the spinal cord. So the sensory neuron gives information to spinal cord. Okay, so it gives information to whom? It gives information to spinal cord, right? So that is the work of sensory neuron. Later the information reaches to spinal cord. So what does the spinal cord do here? It will think what has to be done. It will think to which organ I should send the response. Okay, so what if I do, the body can be protected, you know, all of that it will think. Okay, what do we call this thinking as? Processing. Okay, so it processes the information. It processes, that means it will see whether the information is correct or not, and if it is correct, it will send the response to a particular organ to act. When that organ acts, the hand comes up, it gets protected, right? So that whole thing, thinking and then deciding what has to be done, all these things is called as processing the information. Okay, so it processes the information. It processes the information and generates response. And it generates response. Okay, right? Yeah. Now that information is passed on to another neuron which is called as a motor neuron here. So motor neuron. So what does the motor neuron do here? Motor neuron takes the response to muscle. muscle. Effector organ. What is the effector organ here? Muscle. Okay, see, it is there is a connection between a motor neuron and muscle. This connection, you know, this is called as neuromuscular junction. Okay, so the connection between motor neuron, okay, motor neuron and muscle is called neuromuscular junction. Okay, it is called neuromuscular junction, guys. Okay, so what happens, how does the motor neuron gives information to the muscle, and then muscle acting to bring back your hand is, look at this figure, guys. Okay, so let me go to the next page and I'll show you the neuromuscular junction. It is there in your first page. Yes, look at here. So this is the neuromuscular junction here. See, this is the motor neuron. Okay, so this is the ends of motor neuron. So they are touching onto a muscle. So this is a muscle. Okay, so this thing is a muscle here. Okay, say this is your muscle cell. Okay, so these are the ends of motor neuron. Okay, so when the information is here, okay, information is here, and that information must reach to a muscle cell, isn't it? How? With the help of neurotransmitters. The moment information is here, you know, that releases a chemicals called neurotransmitter. Same thing. So what happens during synapse? Okay, neurotransmitters. Okay, right? If the information has to pass from one neuron to another neuron, what has happened? The neurotransmitters carried the information. No, similarly, they releases a neurotransmitters. Okay, so in the junction, so in the area where the motor neuron got connected to muscle cell, no, they releases a chemicals called neurotransmitters. It is these neurotransmitters which gives information for a muscle cell. So this is a muscle cell. So these neurotransmitters will make the muscle cells to contract. Okay, so here muscle cells will shorten. Muscle cells shorten. Okay, and see, this is the muscle I have. No, muscle cells become shortened when the information reaches. When muscle cell becomes shortens, when this shape of a muscle cell changes, our hand automatically comes back. Okay, so when does the hand is coming back? Whenever the muscle cells shortens. Okay, so the muscle cell is getting contracted here. Okay, so the muscle cell gets contracted here. So this is what the junction between the motor neuron and muscle is called neuromuscular junction. At neuromuscular junction, these neurotransmitters are released and they send the information to a muscle cell to become contract. Okay, to become shortened. The shape of a muscle cell changes here. Once the shape of a muscle cell is changed, okay, so the shape of a muscle cell changes the moment the information has reached to a muscle cell. So once the shape has changed, your hand automatically comes back. Okay, so that is the mechanism here. Okay, so now let me write here. Yes, motor neuron takes the response to the muscle cell and the effector. I will call that muscle as effector organ. So now this effector organ, okay, so the effectors gives the response. Okay, shows the response. Okay, it effector organ shows response. Okay, so this is what the flow chart. Okay, so let me explain the flow chart once again for you all. What is happening? The stimuli is detected. The stimuli is detected by the receptors, and that stimuli is sent to the sensory neuron, and our sensory neuron is carrying information from receptors to spinal cord. Okay, now the information has reached to spinal cord, and spinal cord processes the information and generates the response, and that is given to the motor neuron, and motor neuron is carrying that response and it is delivering to effector organ, and effector effector organ is what which is showing the response here. Okay, and this flow chart, okay, so this is the pathway of reflex action, isn't it? So what is this called? This way of writing. Okay, so this is a flow chart, this is a pathway I have shown, isn't it? The sequence I have shown, from where to where the information is passing, again from where to where the response is coming. So everything is written in the form of a pathway. This is the pathway, this is the flow chart, and this pathway of showing reflex action is called reflex arc. That's it, yeah. Okay, so there is a difference between reflex action and reflex arc. Reflex arc is nothing but this pathway. Okay, from initially receptors are detecting stimuli, later that is sending to sensory neuron, that is sending to spinal cord, from spinal cord motor neuron, from motor neuron to effector organ. This is the general pathway. So this pathway is called as reflex arc. What is a reflex action? The sudden action. The moment your hand touches a coffee, suddenly your hand will come back, right? So that sudden actions are called reflex action, but the pathway, exact flow chart on how the information is passing is called as reflex arc. Okay, so for both you need to write different definitions. Okay, so guys, so that is the major aspect of reflex actions. So now let me show you few visuals and few examples of reflex arcs here. Okay, or reflex action. Reflex arc is a pathway, reflex action is the response, sudden response, isn't it? For that sudden response, whatever the pathway you explain in a proper way, and that pathway is what reflex arc. Okay, so let's see these visuals now. See guys, this is the skin which has detected the stimuli, and that stimuli is sent to the sensory neuron. See, sensory neuron dendrites here. So they have detected the stimuli and they are carrying information to the spinal cord, right? So this is the end of sensory neuron. It has given information to spinal cord. Now the spinal cord thought what has to be done, and the spinal cord is sending the information back to the effector organ. And look at here, so this is the neuromuscular junction, right? So this is our neuromuscular junction, right? Junction. At this junction, what is happening? The neurotransmitters are released and they are sending information to the muscle. So this whole thing is a muscle, and muscle shape changes. That means it contracts. So as a result of that, your hand will act. Okay, so this is the reflex arc. And now look at here, there is a connection between motor neuron and sensory neuron, and that is what we mean by relay neuron. Okay, right? So this is the whole visual that you can observe on reflex action, right? Where is the brain located? Brain is located inside the head. Okay, and you know what? A human brain in a normal healthy adult, it weighs around 1.2 to 1.3 kg. Okay, so that is the weight of a human brain. And very interesting aspect is 80 to 70% of the human brain consists water. Okay, that's the reason we tell drink more water. You must have heard people saying drink more water while you study so that your brain works sharper. Actually, it is true. That is true, 100% true. Okay, majority of the brain consists of water. So the more water you supply, the more sharper the brain can work. No wonder in that. And very interesting aspect, 25% of the oxygen that you consume directly goes to the brain. The more oxygen you supply to a brain, the more work it does, the more sharper it can become. That's the reason we recommend meditation for the students here. So doing meditation is not an old school type, okay? So there is a science behind that. So how do you do the meditation? You inhale long, isn't it? So that means you are inhaling so much oxygen that so much is going to the brain. So more the oxygen you supply, more sharper the brain can become. That is the logic behind meditation. Okay, so don't forget to drink water, drink more water, and inhale more oxygen. How you can inhale more oxygen? In the form of meditations and pranayama techniques. Okay, so this is one trick that you can make your brain work faster. So this is about the basic introduction, guys. So now let us talk about how is the brain protected. Okay, so let me first talk about the protection of brain here. So brain is a very delicate organ, right? Very delicate it is. It has to be protected in a proper way. So let's understand how is this brain is protected. You know what? Brain is actually present in a hard bony structure called brain box. So I will call it as a brain box, or in a normal words you can call it as skull. But in a scientific world we call that as cranium. So what is cranium here? Cranium is nothing but a skull or a bony box in which the brain is safely present. So when you touch your head, you feel the harder thing, right? So that harder thing is the skull. Inside that the brain is there. Okay, and now inside the skull you have three layers. Okay, so let me change the color of the pen. So you have three layers. Layer number 1, okay, layer number 2, layer number 3. So like this 3 layers are there, and these layers are called as meninges. Meninges, very important layers. So they are also there to protect the brain only. Okay, and now these layers are there, no? So these layers are filled with a liquid. Okay, so there is a liquid between this layer and this layer. Liquid here. Okay, so in every gap there is a liquid. Liquid here and liquid here also. So even in this gap also there is completely liquid. Everywhere liquid. Okay, and now this liquid is called as cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. So what is the full form of CSF? Cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so what does this cerebrospinal fluid does? You know what? It gives cushion effect. It gives that cushion effect to brain. So brain floats in this liquid. Okay, so it gives that buoyancy effect. So what do you mean by buoyancy? Buoyancy means floating effect. Okay, so your brain continuously keeps on floating in this liquid. Okay, so you know what, during emergency times when you fall down, you know, the younger people, the younger kids, always they fall down, they get hurt, isn't it, directly onto a head, but nothing happens. Why? Because this cerebrospinal fluid is there, no, it absorbs, it actually absorbs shock. Okay, so that is how it protects the brain. So it is a shock absorbent. This liquid is a shock absorbent. It will see that nothing is gonna happen to a brain. Okay, it gives that cushion effect, number 1, and it is a shock absorbent. Okay, so that is how the brain is protected, guys. Okay, so outside you have a bony box, skull, and into that there are 3 layers, meninges, and all these layers are filled with the cerebrospinal fluid, and even here the brain is literally floating in the cerebrospinal fluid. So what is the importance of the fluid? Number 1, it gives that cushion effect to the brain. Number 2, it absorbs shocks, okay, when we fall down, right? Similarly, even the spinal cord is protected this way. Okay, so you all know right? So if you think this is a brain connecting to a brain running all through your back, you have this spinal cord. Okay, so this is your spinal cord. So even this spinal cord is surrounded by layers. Okay, so even it is surrounded by layers. Okay, so layers, first layer, second layer, third layer. So even these here also you will have this cerebrospinal fluid all over, and now ultimately this fellow is protected with a hard bony structure called backbone. Okay, so here backbone, or in the scientific language you will call it as vertebral column. Vertebral column. So if you touch your back, okay, from neck to back till the tip of your tailbone, that hard bony structure is the backbone. Inside that you have a delicate structure, spinal cord. Okay, so both the brain and spinal cord are protected in a similar way. So the brain is located in cranium and this fellow is located in a backbone. Okay, there also you have 3 layers of meninges. Here also layers are there. There also it's filled with a CSF, and here also it is filled with CSF, which is a cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so this is all about the location of brain and spinal cord and the way they got protected safely. And now let us only focus this superhero of our body. So this brain is the major, coordinating center. Okay, so this is the boss of our body. It's a boss for entire thing. Okay, so head of this body who controls everything, right? So this brain. And see, this is how the outlook of a brain. But if you divide a brain to a half horizontally, right? So how does it look? Observe this. So this is how it looks. Okay, so I have cut the brain to a half. So this is how it looks from inside. Right? And if you see this folded area of a brain, see most of the area of a brain is highly folded and coiled, isn't it? So that part of a brain is called as forebrain. Okay, so there are 3 parts of a brain. Okay, so there are 3 regions, I can say 3 regions of brain, or 3 parts of brain, parts or regions, whatever you want you can call it as. So number 1 is a forebrain, and this forebrain can also be called with the name cerebrum. Very important, cerebrum. See this coiled part, whatever I have shown is what your cerebrum. Next is your midbrain, guys. Okay, so you have the second part, midbrain. So this part, right, with the yellow color pen I am marking, right? So this part is called as a midbrain, and the third part of a brain is the hindbrain. So hind in the sense backside. Okay, so the third one is hindbrain, right? Okay, so this entire part, say this whole thing is called as a hindbrain. Now hindbrain also has got the 3 regions. Hindbrain has got 3 regions. Number 1 is cerebellum. Okay, so there is cerebellum, very important, this tree like structure. Okay, see this small part, so this is what we call cerebellum. Don't get confused between cerebrum and cerebellum. Okay, cerebellum is a part of hindbrain. Okay, second one is pons. Pons is this region, guys. So this region is called pons. Okay, so this part. And third one is medulla. Medulla oblongata, we say. You can just call it as medulla. See this stem part is there, no? So this stem part, this is called as medulla oblongata, or you can just call it as medulla. Okay, so remember only these parts right? As long as your NCERT is concerned. Other than this, nothing is necessary. But still, let me tell you few more things. Okay, see, this forebrain also has got 4 regions. Okay, say you have 3 regions in hindbrain, no? Like that, forebrain also has got 4 regions here, guys. So let me talk about the 4 regions of the forebrain. Okay, so number 1, frontal lobe. Okay, so here the front part. Okay, so this is there, no? So this is that frontal lobe. Okay, next you have parietal lobe we say. Okay, temporal lobe, and the 4th one is occipital lobe. Okay, so like this. So this is a frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe. So this entire folded part, commonly we called it as cerebrum, no? So you have 4 regions. This entire thing we divided into 4 parts. This is a frontal, parietal, temporal and occipital. Like that, forebrain also has got divided into 4 regions here. Okay, but you no need to remember for your grade 10 level. Okay, but still, just for the knowledge sake, if you find these regions in any of the reference book that you are following, don't panic. Okay, so they are the regions of forebrain. So now you have understood the different parts of the brain, and each part has got what are the different regions, right? So now let us understand which part does what work. Okay, so number 1, the biggest part of the brain is your forebrain, isn't it? So the forebrain is very, very important. So now let me discuss the importance of forebrain, guys. Right? So forebrain is the major part, okay, very, very important part, and it will control all voluntary actions. Very, very important. Control all voluntary actions. So by the way, what do you mean by voluntary actions? The actions which are there under the control of thinking process. Okay, so these are the actions controlled by thinking process. Okay, so that's very, very important. For example, running, right, jogging, jumping, talking. See, all these are under the control of thinking process here. See, if I feel like talking, I talk. Otherwise, I'll keep quiet. Okay, so if I feel like walking, I walk. Otherwise, I can just stand. Right? So this running, jogging and all these actions are under thinking process control. Okay, so what do we say? They are under the control of our mind. Thinking process in the sense mind in general terms. Okay, so those actions are called voluntary actions. So all voluntary actions are controlled by or managed by this forebrain. And not only that, it is a seat of intelligence. Okay, intelligence, memory. Yes, you remember the things, your body remembers everything that has happened. Okay, actually whatever happened with this body is everything I told you, it gets registered in the brain's memory, right? So it is a seat of intelligence, seat of memory. Okay, so all of that will come here, and this forebrain is actually connected to sense organs, right? So your vision, your way of smelling, taste and everything is perceived by this region only. So I told you, this frontal lobe, say this part of a brain, the frontal lobe part, it is responsible for the decision making, logical thinking, reasoning and all of that. Okay, likewise occipital lobe, it is responsible for the vision, hearing, smell and etc. Okay, like that each lobe is responsible for one of the other works here, right? So all together we have discussed. Okay, we didn't individually discuss what is parietal lobe does, what is occipital lobe does. All the things in general, in common, we have discussed. Okay, under the heading of forebrain here. Okay, so actually your seat of intelligence, memory and everything is controlled by parietal lobe. Okay, your decision making, logical thinking, reasoning, all of that is controlled by the front lobe, that is frontal lobe. Okay, so like this each lobe does different things. So these are the different functions of forebrain here. Majorly all your voluntary actions are controlled by the forebrain. Okay, so that's all about the forebrain. Now coming to a midbrain. So what is the work of midbrain? So midbrain will control involuntary actions. Control involuntary actions. So what are involuntary actions? Opposite, the actions which are not under thinking process. Okay, so actions which are not under the control of thinking process. Okay, so this is very important. So which are the actions not under the control of thinking process? So for example, let me tell you the things controlled by midbrain. Eye movements. Okay, so the midbrain controls, so this is one of the very important function of midbrain. So it will control eye movements. Okay, so you continuously keep on moving your eyes, isn't it? Say we look there, we look here. See, it is not under our thinking process control. So automatically your eye movements do happen. Even when you sleep also, if you observe carefully, the people who are in a disturbed sleep, their eyes continuously move. That means the pupil inside the eye continuously moves. Isn't it? So these eye movements are not under the thinking process control. If I feel like stopping the eye movements, I cannot stop. It automatically happens. The muscle in the eye automatically moves here. Okay, so those eye movements are controlled by midbrain. Okay, so there are so many functions, but I am giving you few functions that you can remember for exam point of view. Okay, so that is the work of midbrain, right? And any other involuntary actions also it can perform, right? Okay, so now going to the third part, hindbrain here, very important. And I told you hindbrain has got the three regions, and those three regions individually we have to discuss. See, the first one is cerebellum, I said. Okay, so where is cerebellum here? So cerebellum is that, you know, this tree kind of thing. So this is your cerebellum, right? So what does this cerebellum do? So let me write the parts here only. Okay, the functions here itself. Yeah. So your cerebellum is all about balance. Okay, so now I am showing you the functions of cerebellum. Right, cerebellum of hindbrain. So what does the cerebellum do? It is all about the body balance, or you can also use the word body equilibrium. Equilibrium in the sense balance here, don't get confused. Okay, say for example riding a bicycle, you have to balance the cycle and you should keep on moving, right? So riding a bicycle is a act that involves body balance, right? And also walking in a straight line. If you want to walk in a straight line, yes, your body balance have to help here, right? And then picking up a pencil. Picking a pencil is also an act that depends on the balance only. Okay, say they will ask a very different question in the exam. An alcoholic person, okay, in an alcoholic person, what part of the brain gets affected? Say an alcoholic person or a drunkard person, if you ask him to walk in a straight line, will he walk in a straight line? No, right? That means his body balance is out of the control. So what part of the brain got affected in the alcoholic person? It is the cerebellum part that got affected. That's the reason he is out of his balance. Okay, so this cerebellum is responsible for body balance, okay, all acts relating to body balance and body posture also. So all your body postures are also controlled by this part called cerebellum. Okay, so next is pons. Yeah, so the pons will control the movements of muscles, Okay, so what is the function of medulla? Very important. Medulla oblongata. This is the brain stem, we say. Medulla can also be called as a brain stem. So this controls same thing, involuntary actions. So this will control involuntary actions. What kind of involuntary actions? Such as sneezing. Can you control sneezing? No, right? Sneezing, vomiting. Vomiting also you can't control, it automatically comes out, right? And then breathing, you can't control breathing also, breathing, and the digestion that is happening inside your body, the respiration, and all of them, you can't control them. They happen on their own. They are not under thinking process control. Okay, so those involuntary actions are controlled by medulla. The detailed aspects of endocrine system. So what do you mean by endocrine system? Nothing but a hormonal system or chemical coordination. So in the previous video we discussed how hormones are produced. So they are produced by different glands, endocrine glands, which are there in our body, isn't it? And here you need to understand all glands will work as a teamwork, yaar. Okay, so here one gland is highly dependent on another gland for the secretion of hormones. Okay, so it is not just the organs that work as a team. Also these glands work as a team to produce hormones. One gland is highly dependent on another gland for the secretion of hormones. Okay, so that's very important. So all these glands, so whatever glands are there, all endocrine glands, they work together. They work together to produce hormones. Okay, so to produce hormones. So this is very important, right? So even if one gland stops working, the other glands also will get affected. What I meant to tell you is every gland is interdependent with other glands for its work, for the secretion of hormones. Okay, so that is one aspect that you need to know here. So now there are so many endocrine glands in our body, but we are going to discuss about few endocrine glands which are very important and the glands which are actually mentioned in our NCERT syllabus. Okay, so let me show you all the endocrine glands first. So look at here, endocrine system in female and in male. Okay, so if you see here in brain, okay, so in male brain and female brain commonly, so you have the three glands here. So hypothalamus, pineal gland, pituitary gland. Okay, so here in our syllabus we will discuss very detailed aspects on pituitary gland and some aspects I will tell you about hypothalamus. Okay, so where is hypothalamus located? Pineal gland and pituitary glands located? They are located in brain. You should also know where they are located here. Okay, so usually the pituitary gland is a pea-sized gland. That means it is of the size of peas. You can imagine how small it is, right? Such a small gland can do lot of work. right? Okay, so next is your thyroid gland, guys. So this is not thymus here, so it is wrongly labeled, and this gland is your thyroid gland. Okay, so which is there in your neck area. So butterfly shaped gland you have in your body, that is a thyroid gland. Okay, so this gland is a thyroid gland. Okay, fine. And next, the thymus gland is also there, but we are not going to discuss about the thymus gland in our syllabus, so no need to worry. And here, look over here, so this is your pancreas in both female and male, right? So you all know pancreas, where it is present, and what work it does in digestion. Yes, pancreatic juice will help in the digestion of carbohydrates, proteins and fats, isn't it? So the same pancreas can also secrete a hormone called insulin here. So pancreas is another very important gland that we are going to discuss. So next is our adrenal glands. Guys, look over here. Above the kidney, adrenal glands are located above the kidney here. Okay, so suppose, these are the kidneys. So above the kidney, in the shape of a cap. Okay, so they are the cap shaped structures. So these are called adrenal glands. Okay, so two glands would be there on both the kidneys, so they are adrenal glands, very important. And now coming to the female. In female, in the lower abdomen, you have two ovaries. Okay, so there is a pair of ovaries, so which is responsible for the secretion of female hormones. Okay, so which again are helpful in the development of female characters, right? So there are two ovaries in the abdominal area and also in the two testes. Okay, so this is the testis and these are the ovaries. Okay, so these are the reproductive glands, we can say, right? So these are the different glands that we are going to discuss. So their location is important, and what hormone they will secrete, that is important, and that particular hormone does what work, what is the function of the hormone, this is very important. And also, if there is a overproduction of hormone or underproduction of hormone, that means if there is excess hormone, it leads to one particular disease. If there is a very less hormone than required, that also leads to a disease. So those diseases also we are going to study in a detailed way. Okay, so first let me talk about the pituitary gland, which is very important. So I will discuss about hypothalamus little later. Okay, so first gland is the pituitary gland, guys, and this pituitary gland is also called as master gland. Okay, so because it controls all other glands. Okay, so pituitary gland is like the head nurse in the hospital who will control all the people in the hospital, right? So it's a master gland. So if the question is asked why is pituitary gland is called master gland, the answer is very simple, it controls. Okay, so it controls all other glands, right? So that's the reason it's called master gland. And where is it located? Location is very important. Location. Okay, and then we have to discuss the type of hormone secreted and its function. So these are very important. So where is pituitary gland located? It is present in brain. Okay, so pea-sized gland, very small gland in a brain. Okay, so the hormone secreted by pituitary is growth hormone. You know what, many hormones it will secrete here, not just the growth hormone, there are so many stimulating hormones it will secrete. Okay, so it will also secrete stimulating hormones, secretes stimulating hormones. Okay, stimulating hormones in the sense the hormones which stimulates all other glands. Okay, so the pituitary has to tell to thyroid, oh thyroid, get up, you secrete your hormone. Okay, so how will it tell to thyroid to secrete its hormone? It will send a chemical. Okay, so that chemical is a stimulating hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone we say. Okay, TSH. Okay, so if anybody is suffering from thyroid in your houses, just check their report. See, TSH levels are very important. Looking at the TSH level only, the doctor will identify whether a person is suffering from thyroid or not. Okay, so nowadays the thyroid has become so much common. Okay, many of your mothers also would be having thyroid. Go check their report and see this word TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. This is not the thyroxine actually. Okay, so thyroid stimulating hormone is secreted by whom? Pituitary gland. Yeah, so if this hormone is there in a blood, okay, then it is confirmed that thyroid is secreting its hormone properly. Okay, so the doctor will check TSH levels, not the actual thyroxine. Doctor will check TSH level. Okay, so TSH is the stimulating hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone secreted by pituitary. Okay, so when pituitary releases this hormone in the blood, it will go and tell to thyroid. It will knock thyroid. Oh thyroid, get up. You do your duty. What is the thyroid duty? To secrete its hormone. Okay, so like this, it will activate all other glands by secreting the respective stimulating hormone. Okay. So, but in our syllabus we concentrate more on the growth hormone. Okay, so growth hormone, what is the function of growth hormone? Growth hormone is responsible for growth of a body. Okay, so you find this hormone majorly in childhood. Okay, so usually in a childhood you will see this hormone in a body. Usually in the adult body you don't find much of a growth hormone. Okay, see in when we are at the age of 13, 14, 15, that means of your age, all of a sudden you will see increase in height, right? So this is all because of the growth hormone that is there in your body. So it is responsible for growth of a person. Okay, and now let us discuss the diseases. If there is a overproduction of growth hormone, okay, so overproduction of growth hormone, so GH in the sense growth hormone, okay, it leads to a disease called gigantism. Very important here. Okay, so it leads to a disease called gigantism. Gigantism in the sense growing too tall. You must have seen a people of 7 feet, right? 7.5 feet, right? So it is not normal here. It is actually a disease, okay, which is called as gigantism. So gigantism is growing too tall. So when does it cause? When there is too much of growth hormone in a body, right? And underproduction of growth hormone. So when the growth hormone is very less in a people, you will observe a disease called dwarfism. Both the diseases are very important. So dwarfism is growing too little, right? So they are of 3 feet height, 3.5 feet height. You must have seen the people. They are very commonly found in a society, right? So when growth hormone is very less in their body, they won't grow in height. Okay, so they remain short. So that disease is called dwarfism here. So this is all about the pituitary gland that you need to know for exam point of view. Where is it located? What hormone it is secreting? What is the function of that hormone? And if the hormone is too much, what disease? If the hormone is too little produced, what is the disease? Okay, so this is all about the pituitary gland. So now let us talk about the thyroid gland. So very important, thyroid. So what did I tell you? Thyroid is present in neck area, right? So it is a butterfly shaped gland. Okay, so let me show you the picture of thyroid here. This is the thyroid gland. Okay, so it is a butterfly shaped. You can see the shape here, butterfly shape, and it is present in the front side of the neck. Okay, so this is what the location of thyroid here. So location is neck area, and it will secrete the hormone called thyroxine here. Very important hormone here. So secretes hormone called thyroxine. Okay, so this is the hormone secreted by thyroid gland. So what it will does it will help in the metabolism of carbohydrates, proteins, okay, and fats. So what do you mean by metabolism, guys? So metabolism means very simple, how fast the cellular respiration is happening inside the cell to produce energy. Okay, so how fast the energy production is happening, how fast the energy is produced in a cell after respiration, after cellular respiration. You know, energy is produced when glucose undergoes oxidation. That's what we will call cellular respiration, right? So how fast the energy is produced? Actually, when you consume food, how fast the digestion is happening, and after that how fast the things are moving on to a cells, and inside the cell how fast the energy is producing. You know, this is what is decided by this hormone called thyroxine. Okay, so you know, if thyroxine production is very less in a body, your metabolism will get affected. That means your digestion becomes weak, the production of energy becomes very slow. Okay, so everything becomes slow in a body. As a result of that, you feel very weak, you feel very dull, you feel very lazy, and your entire immune system will become weaker and weaker, right? So this is what the less production of thyroid leads to, right? Okay, so that is the function of thyroxine, guys. Okay, so it helps in the metabolism of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. If metabolism gets disturbed, I think everything in the body will get disturbed. So metabolism is very important. It's very important. The moment you consume food, it's very important how fast it is getting absorbed in the blood, and after that it's very important how fast the things are moving to our cells, and later it's very important how fast the cellular respiration is happening to produce energy, right? So that thing, if that entire thing gets disturbed, everything gets disturbed in a body, right? So it's very important to maintain a proper metabolism in a body, and that is controlled and managed by the hormone called thyroxine. So thyroxine is produced by the gland, thyroid gland. Okay, so now let us, and to produce this thyroxine, iodine is very much necessary. Okay, so iodine is necessary to produce thyroxine. Okay, so if anybody is suffering from deficiency of iodine, okay, so if somebody is not consuming iodine rich food, okay, then that person suffers from a disease called goiter. Okay, so here deficiency of iodine formula is I2, okay, leads to a disease called goiter here. So what is a goiter? Swelling of neck. Okay, swelling of neck. You must have seen nowadays the people suffering from goiter has become very less, because we all are having iodized salt. isn't it? So the normal table salt that we use and that we buy from a market contains iodine naturally. Okay, so they mix iodine there, and that food we are consuming. So we don't become deficiency of iodine. Okay, so iodine is very much necessary to produce thyroxine actually. So if you don't consume enough of iodine, enough of thyroxine will not be produced in a body. That leads to the swelling of thyroid gland. If thyroid gland swells, then the entire neck will swell. Okay, let me show you the picture here. See here, the neck part, how bulge it is, right? So this is what we call goiter. Okay, but nowadays, this condition is very less, right? Because we are all consuming iodine rich foods. And here two more diseases you will commonly observe relating to thyroid gland. Okay, so not only the goiter, that is swelling of neck, under secretion of thyroxine leads to thyroxine hormone also leads to a condition called hypothyroidism. Yeah, this is a common disease most of the ladies suffer. Okay, so if you look at your mothers or aunts, you ask someone in the family, there would be at least one person who suffers from this hypothyroidism. All of a sudden they become weak. Okay, so their metabolism, why they become weak and lazy and lethargic? Because their metabolism got disturbed. Why does the metabolism got disturbed? Because of the less production of thyroxine hormone. Okay, overproduction of thyroxine leads to hyperthyroidism. Hyper means too much. Okay, hyperthyroidism here. Okay, so these are the common diseases that you will observe when there is a underproduction of thyroid and overproduction of thyroid. So that is all about the thyroid gland here. So now let us discuss about very important gland, pancreas. Okay, so you all know pancreas is a leaf-like structure. Okay, so which is present below the stomach, isn't it? So here you have a stomach in the digestive system. So below the stomach you have this leaf-like structure which is nothing but a pancreas. So this pancreas will secrete a hormone called insulin. Very important. So India has become a diabetic capital of the world, right? So that means number of sugar patients, the number of people suffering from diabetes is too much in our country, right? So that's why India is also called as a diabetic capital. So diabetes is a very dangerous disease. It's a lifestyle disease. Because of the food habits, because of the lifestyle, people are suffering from this diabetes. Okay, so let's understand how is this diabetes caused and how insulin is responsible for this. Okay, so how it can manage the blood sugar levels and etc. See guys, so this insulin is secreted by pancreas, isn't it? And what this insulin does is it actually lowers the sugar level in blood. Okay, right? So how it lowers the sugar level in a blood? Very beautiful mechanism. Observe here. Okay, say after digestion. So after digestion of carbohydrate. Okay, so in stomach or in a small intestine, carbohydrates gets digested. No, after that, what is produced here as a nutrient? Glucose. Okay, so this glucose will come to blood, isn't it? And through blood, okay, so through blood, the glucose, so the glucose molecules, let me write it as G. Okay, so through the blood they are coming and standing near cells. Okay, so ultimately the glucose molecules which are formed have to reach to every cell of our body, but the glucose like that only will not enter into a cell. Okay, because the cell is very much protective. What if What if it is a foreign body, right? Cell does not know that it is a glucose. Somebody have to give hint here. Okay, somebody should come and tell a cell that knock knock, open your doors so that glucose enters. Okay, until and unless something comes and tells a cell to open the doors, the cell will not open its door. Okay, until and unless the doors of a cells are not opened, glucose will not enter. When glucose does not enter, there is no cellular respiration, there is no energy production. Okay, right? So here, what is that something should go to every cell and make it understand that it is glucose standing outside and allow it inside. That is this fellow. So this is the hormone that should go to every cell and it should knock every cell. Knock, knock, knock. Glucose is standing outside. Let in. That's what is the work of insulin. Okay, so from pancreas insulin is produced, that also will be released into the blood. Through blood it should reach to every cell and it should open the locks of a cell so that the glucose enters. So once the glucose sits on a cell, only then the cells will make a way so that the glucose enters. Okay, so once the insulin goes and sits on a cell, once the insulin goes and sits on a cell, you know what, the glucose finds entry into a cell, right? So that is the work of glucose. So whatever glucose is there in a blood, it will send all that glucose into the cells. That's why we say, what is its duty? It lowers the sugar level in blood. How? By taking it to every cell and making the glucose to enter into every cell. Okay, so that is the real work of insulin. How beautiful, isn't it? Cells will not allow whatever comes onto them. Somebody must be there to go and give a hint. Somebody must be there to go and tell a cell that this is what coming, you open your doors. Only then the cells will open the doors to invite the glucose molecules or whatever. So who is that somebody here going to every cell and telling that it is glucose waiting outside? It is our insulin. Okay, right? So that is how it lowers the sugar level in a blood. If insulin does not go to every cell and tell, then the entire glucose would remain in the blood only. If the glucose remains in the blood only, what will happen? There is no cellular respiration in a cell. There is no energy production. The person will become very weak. Okay, and that condition, deficiency of insulin. So deficiency of insulin, that is underproduction of insulin, what leads to a disease called diabetes. Okay, so if there is no proper amount of insulin in a blood, there is nobody to wake up the cells to allow glucose inside. So if insulin does not come and sit on a cell, glucose will not enter into a cell. The entire glucose will remain in a blood only. Okay, so and that glucose might come through a urine also from outside the body. Then what is the use? How does a person gets energy? He won't get energy. So that's why the diabetic patient always feels hungry, isn't it? So why does he feel hungry? Because the cellular respiration is not happening. Okay, so whatever glucose is there, that is not reaching the cell here. It's not, the purpose of the glucose is not being served there. Okay, so that's why there is no oxidation, there is no energy production. That's why the diabetic patients always remain so much, dull and weak. They look weak, isn't it? And also they urinate a lot because lot of glucose in the blood and all of that will come out of the body in the form of a urine, right? So this is what is the disease called diabetes. And I have a beautiful visual here on how the glucose actually works. Let us see that visual now. Okay. You can see here, this is a pancreas producing insulin. This triangle thing is insulin. When insulin is standing on a cell, the lock is open, the glucose is coming inside. See, insulin came, sitting here, lock is open, glucose entered. Okay, you observe once again here. Okay, observe once again. Insulin produced by pancreas. That insulin is coming and sitting on receptor of a cell. Lock open, glucose is going. Right? So very beautiful visual, no? So the insulin, until and unless this insulin comes and sits here, the lock will not open. Okay? So when insulin comes and sits here, the lock gets opened and the glucose enters inside. Right? So this is the work of insulin. Imagine if this insulin is not there, then the glucose will stay outside only. It is gonna stay in the blood only. It's not going to go into the cell. Okay, when glucose is not there, there is no energy production. Right? So that is the importance of insulin, guys. Okay, so the deficiency of insulin always leads to a disease called diabetes. Very, very, very important. Actually, pancreas can also secrete another hormone called glucagon. Okay, so glucagon is opposite. So of course, about glucagon they may not ask in the exam, but still for the knowledge sake you can remember this. Okay, so you know what? Excess glucose, excess glucose, whatever we have consumed through food, you know, it gets stored. It gets stored in the form of glycogen. Here. Okay, so where is this glycogen present? Glycogen is present in liver and also around muscles. Okay, so when you consume too much of carbohydrates, so whatever excess of glucose is there, you know, that is nicely, safely stored in the form of this chemical called glycogen. Okay, and where is it stored? In liver and in muscles. Okay, and during the fasting time, you know, when you fast for 1 day or 2 days, right, even if you fast for 4 days, people will not die because the stored glycogen is there in a body. So during those emergency time, okay, so during fasting time, whenever there is a requirement of glucose, but we are not taking glucose from outside, those time, okay, that means during fasting time, you know what, this glycogen will break down into glucose, and now this glucose is used up by the cells to produce the energy. Okay, and again with the help of insulin here. Okay, and the conversion of glycogen into glucose is done by the hormone called, glucagon. Okay, so glucagon is another hormone secreted by pancreas only, but when it comes into a picture, whenever there is a conversion of glycogen into glucose, okay, glycogen is what? It is a stored glucose only. Okay, so whenever this glycogen has to convert to glucose, then this hormone will help. Okay, so indirectly saying glucagon will help in the increase of sugar level in blood. Okay, it helps in the increase of sugar level in blood, isn't it? So whenever all the glycogen is converted into glucose, so that glucose will flow through blood only to every cell. So that means glucagon is indirectly increasing the sugar level in blood. Okay, and insulin will help in the decrease of sugar level in blood. So what is the work of insulin? It decreases the sugar level in blood by allowing all the glucose to get into different cells. So whenever you have low secretion of insulin, it leads to a disease called diabetes. That is the reason diabetes people will take insulin injections or insulin tablets, right? Because their body is naturally not producing insulin. So from outside, in the form of a tablet, in the form of an injection, the patients will take insulin shots. Okay, so that is all about the work of pancreas. Okay, so adrenal gland. So what is their locations? So you will have two adrenal glands here. So they are located above the kidney. Okay, so you will find a cap like structures above the kidney. So you can write the location as above kidneys. Okay, yes. And the hormone that they secrete is very important hormone, adrenaline. Adrenaline. Okay, fine. And this hormone is also called as fright and flight hormone. Fright and flight hormone. Fright in the sense what? Fear, isn't it? So fear. Flight in the sense what? Run away. Run away. Okay, see, this is also an emergency hormone. So this is secreted during emergency times when the body have to survive itself. Say for example, a snake has come in front of you. You just run, no? You won't think and you will just run. So during those emergency times, this hormone is released. It is this hormone that actually makes you run 100 times faster. Okay, so you will become like a PT Usha. Right? When you look at lion, when you look at snake, when you look at something very shocking, okay, when your body feels some high danger is there in front of you, you will just run like marathon runner only. Okay, so though you don't have any energy, you will run 100x times faster. It's because during that emergency time, this hormone, fright and flight hormone, that is adrenaline, is released into your blood. Okay, so what changes happen when adrenaline is released? This is a serious question, very important question for you all, and observe the changes. Okay, so what is the question? What changes? What changes are observed? So write down this question in your book. Observed when adrenaline is released into a blood. Okay, is released into a blood, guys. So very important. So now I will list out all the changes. Observe, your heart beats faster. Okay, beats faster. Yes, you can imagine. So whenever you are in a utter shock, okay, so your heart starts beating up. You can hear your heartbeat. Right? So because of the heart beating faster, you know what? More oxygen supply happens to muscles. Okay, because your muscles, your leg muscles have to work faster here. Say lion is there in front of you. So you have to run. So which is the muscle that should work effectively? Your leg muscle. So all the oxygen will go to your leg muscle. So your leg muscle becomes more powerful than normal. So you will run with high speed. Okay, so it's all happening inside your body. Your body is very intelligent here. Okay, see, now the thing is, your muscle have to work than anything in a body. Okay, so all the oxygen supply happens to the muscles. Okay, and oxygen supply stops to digestive system. Oxygen supply is stopped to digestive system, because here, see, during emergency time, digestion is not important for us. Okay, so that's the reason, for time being, oxygen supply will stop to all digestive system organs. So that's the reason when you are so much fearful, when you are so much frightened, you will observe stomach upset. Okay, you wanted to go for washroom, isn't it? Say for example, when you are nervous in the examination hall, you are not getting anything, you are so much fearful, you feel like going to washroom. You will find those sounds in the stomach because your digestive system is becoming weak. Why is your digestive system becoming weak? Because oxygen supply has stopped to your digestive system. Okay, and you know what? Your skin looks pale, right? Skin looks pale. Why? Because oxygen supply stopped. It is also because oxygen supply stopped to skin. Okay, because here oxygen supply to skin is not important during emergency time. Survival is more important. Protecting your body is very important. So that's why the oxygen which is supposed to go to skin, the oxygen which is supposed to go to digestive system will take a U-turn, and all the oxygen will go to your muscles. Okay, especially your leg muscles, because you will have to run, okay, without even thinking. So your muscles will gain that much extra power by gaining all the oxygen. Okay, the route is getting diverted here. So this is what the hormone does when it is released into a blood. Okay, so your blood pressure all of a sudden increases. Okay, your heart beat faster. Okay, your oxygen supply to digestive system becomes weaker, oxygen supply to the skin becomes lesser, so that all the oxygen is diverted to go to the muscles, so that muscles work stronger to protect yourself, to protect your body, okay, during emergency time. Okay, so that's why this hormone is called fight and flight hormone. Okay, so very important hormone. Even when you see some action movies, right, so you get exaggerated, your heart beats and etc., right. So it is also because of the adrenaline rush. If you have observed the movies, they would mention in the heading adrenaline rush type of movie and etc. So that means you will have that adrenaline rush here. Okay, so you have to mention these points when a question is asked. What happens when adrenaline is released into a blood? This is what happens. Okay, now if there is a overproduction of adrenaline, so if there is a overproduction of adrenaline, what do you observe is, you will observe blood pressure. Okay, the person will suffer from high blood pressure, high BP. BP means what? Blood pressure. Okay, and usually adrenaline is not released every time. Only during emergency time this hormone is released here. It should not be released every time. In case if it is releasing slowly every day, that leads to high blood pressure actually, and this is a very dangerous call also if too much blood pressure if you observe in a person. Okay, so that is all about adrenal gland here. So very important, and you find this adrenaline hormone more in animals, because it is the animals that they have to protect themselves, right? Say for example, a lion hunting a deer, so the deer has to really run faster, right? And the squirrel to protect himself, right? And these animals will really have too much of adrenaline. That's the reason their muscles are very strong and they run, they move very fast. Okay, so that is about adrenal gland and adrenaline hormone. So now let us talk about ovaries and testes. So ovaries are the glands which you will find in female, and testes are the gland which you will find in male. Okay, so they are present in the abdominal area, abdomen of female, and testes in the lower abdomen. Okay, so below abdomen, you can say below abdomen of male. Okay, yeah. And what hormone they release? So ovaries release two hormones. Very important to mention their names properly. Okay, one is progesterone, and the other one is estrogen. Okay, and the testes will release a male hormone, testosterone. Okay, so now what does the progesterone do? Progesterone and estrogen, both of them combined together, they help in developing secondary female characters. Secondary female character in the sense, during the time of puberty, that means the moment the people reach 12 years, 13 years, definitely people observe some bodily changes, right? So their sexual organs become developed. Okay, so the private parts become developed, and all the changes that happens physically, mentally, emotionally is because of these two hormones. Okay, in females. Similarly, in male also, this testosterone will help in the development of, okay, development of secondary male characters. Secondary male characters. Okay, yeah, so this is about the ovaries and testes. And you know, if there is a overproduction or underproduction of these hormones, actually leads to fertility problem, reproductive issues. Okay, so they end up in leading to the reproductive problems, right? So that is all about these glands. If I ask you a question, how does plants move, right? So how plants move? In fact, what exactly we mean by movements in plants, right? Is it the flowing of leaves or small branches in air? No, that is not movement. Okay, so that movement is because of wind or air. You know, you see, whenever there is a wind or too much of air in the atmosphere, obviously the leaves would move, the small branches would move, the big branches would slightly move, right? All of that is there, but they are all very, very common movements. Okay, right? Usually the plant body does not have any nervous tissue, it does not have any muscles, right, for the movements. So those movements that you commonly see is due to the wind, but there are certain movements, okay, happening inside a plant. There are certain hormones also which are actually giving information from one place to another place of a plant body. Okay, so you know what, these movements are very, very different in plants, right? And here many a times movements is nothing but growth. Okay, movement is nothing but growth here. Okay, so if I have to categorize the movements, there are two types of movements in a plant body. Okay, right? See, plants does not have nervous tissue, muscles, skeletal system, nothing is there. Okay, so here we are going to talk what exactly these hormones which are there in plant body does, and what exactly is making a plant to move. Okay, I mean, what exactly making a plant to grow in height, okay, to grow in width and etc. Okay, so here majorly the movement means growth. Okay, so plant goes, okay, up, it means the plant is growing tall. The plant can go wide, that means the plant can grow in width, right? The stem can become fat, that's what the movement here. The roots go deep down under the soil, right? So that is what the movement of roots here. So here the movement is nothing but the growth. That is one thing you all should understand. Okay, so majority of the movements here in a plant body is nothing but the growth happening that way. Okay, say a shoot moving up means what? This is what the movement upwards, but actually that is a growth related movement, right? So the root going deep down into the soil is nothing but the growth related movement it is. Okay, so that's why I told you majorly in plant body the movement is nothing but the growth. Okay, so based on this the movements are usually categorized into two types. Okay, so now in the next page, you know, let us talk the two types of movements in plant. Okay, so two types of movements, very, very important here, understand this first. So the first one is growth dependent movement. Okay, so that means movement due to growth, movement due to growth. Okay, so growth, so which we can also call it as growth dependent movement, Okay, so the other one is growth independent movement. Growth independent. You must have seen touch me not plant. I will show it a little later. Okay, so you know these movements are nothing to do with growth. Okay, so there are growth dependent movements and growth independent movements that you observe in a plant body. Okay, so we majorly talk about the movements relating to growth. Majority of the movements that is happening with the plant body, inside a plant body, is all related to growth only. Okay, right? So we majorly concentrate on this kind of movement. This also we will discuss in a chapter, but that is very, very less. We will do it at the end. Okay, and one more aspect, growth dependent movements are also called with the name tropic movements. Okay, so they might ask you in the exam, what do you mean by tropic movements? Okay, so tropic means movement, growth dependent movement. Okay, so the movement which is relating to growth is what we call tropic movement. Okay, and whereas these growth independent movement is called as nastic movement. Okay, remember the name. So they might ask you, what is a nastic movement? It is the movement which is independent of the growth. Okay, there is no relationship between growth and movement. The best example is touch me not plant. Okay, so first we will discuss this aspect, right? See, these tropic movement or growth dependent movement are due to two factors actually. So it is due to two factors. Okay, first one is stimuli. Okay, and the second one is hormones, which we will call it as plant hormones. So the growth happens inside the plant body, or the movement happens inside the plant body, is majorly because of two factors. One is when you give stimuli. Stimuli means here stimuli can be given in the form of light, okay, water, touch, and etc. Okay, so the movement happens in a direction where the plant is getting a stimuli. Okay, so you must have seen sunflower plants, they always turn towards the sun. So from sun light is coming, that is the stimuli for a plant here. Okay, so the plant body will grow in such a direction in which the sunlight is coming. Okay, so here what is the stimuli? Okay, so stimuli can be the light, water, touch, gravity. Okay, so all these are stimuli. Okay, in whichever direction the plant body is getting stimuli, in that direction growth happens, movement of plant happens. So always remember here movement is nothing but growth. Whenever I say plant moves in the direction of stimuli, it means the plant is growing in the direction of stimuli. Okay, right? So and you know what, another factor that is responsible for the growth and movement is plant hormones. Okay, so first we will discuss about the tropic movements. Okay, that means the growth that is happening due to the stimuli. There are various types. Okay, so all of that we will discuss, and later plant hormones. Plant hormones are like helping factors for the growth of a plant body. Okay, so let's understand one by one individually. Okay, so first is tropic movements. Tropic movements can happen due to two factors, this factor and this factor. So based on the different stimuli, see, light is one kind of stimuli here, water is one kind of stimuli, touch is one kind of stimuli for the movement of plant or growth of plant. So depending on the stimuli, we have different types of tropic movements. Okay, so let us discuss all of them one by one. So different types of tropic movements. So the first one is phototropism. Phototropism. Next, geotropism. So very, very important, all of them. Hydrotropism. The meaning is there in the name itself here. Chemotropism. Very, very important. Chemotropism. and the final one is thigmotropism, right? Yeah. So now let us discuss one by one in a detailed way. So the first one is phototropism. So simple, yeah. Photo in the sense light, isn't it? So here the stimuli is light, sunlight. Okay, so that means the growth of plant body in response to light, okay, towards the light. You can write this way: growth of plant towards light, okay, or in response to light, towards light, is called as phototropism. Okay, say if you take a plant, right, so it will have a stem, shoot, right? So this is the shoot of a plant and this is a root of a plant. So this is a root. If you look at the shoot always grows in the direction of sunlight only. Shoot always goes upwards. Okay, right? Because the sunlight is there up in the sky. So if you have seen the sunflower plants or many other plants, you know, the potted plants that you have in your home, you observe early in the morning, you know what, they will actually slightly bend. Their direction is there in such a way that they are facing towards directly to the sunlight. Okay, so that means the shoot is trying to move in the direction of sunlight. Okay, so this shoot, say suppose if sun is there, if the sunlight is coming in this direction, the shoot will try to grow in the direction of sunlight only. Okay, suppose if the sunlight is this side, the shoot will bend in such a direction. Shoot will try to grow in such a direction wherever the sunlight is falling too much. Okay, so the growth towards light, the movement of plant towards light is called as phototropism. Simple. And now here what we say is, which is the plant part that is growing and moving towards sunlight? It is shoot, right? So we say shoot is positively phototropic. Okay, shoot is positively phototropic, we say. Okay, then if you observe roots, they are away from sunlight. They don't want to go in the direction of sunlight. They never grow in the direction of sunlight. They are always opposite to sunlight. Roots doesn't require sunlight. Okay, they go deep down. They are attracted to the gravity actually. They are not attracted to sunlight. They are attracted to the gravity. So the root always grows in the direction of gravity experience. Right? So what we say is roots are negatively phototropic. Negatively phototropic. Okay, so this is what the meaning of phototropism. So you should know the definition, meaning, and you should also know which part of the plant body is positively phototropic. Positively phototropic means that part is going towards light, growing towards light. Okay, and negatively phototropic means that particular part is growing away from the light. Okay, so root is negatively phototropic whereas shoot is positively phototropic. Okay, so this is all about the phototropism. But here, you know, the bending of stem towards light, not just the sunlight as a stimuli that is making a stem to grow towards itself, but there are hormones, the plant hormones called auxins here. Okay, the plant hormones called auxins. They will also play a very important role in the bending of stem towards sunlight. I'll tell you why actually the stem is bent. You know, how does the auxins play a very important role in bending of stem? That I will discuss when I talk about plant hormones in the next video. Okay, fine. So overall, this is what about the phototropism. Okay, and now coming to the next tropism, that is geotropism. So very simple, guys. So geo means, you know, the earth, the gravity, right? So here growth towards, growth you can write, or the word movement also you can write. Both are same. So here movement is nothing but growth only. Okay, so growth towards gravity or earth, okay, is called as geotropism. So here what we say is root is positively geotropic, we say. Okay, so roots are the parts of a plant body which grows towards a gravity, which are attracted towards a gravity, okay, towards a ground, whereas shoot, okay, whereas shoot is negatively geotropic, we say. Okay, so that's all about geotropism, right? You just have to understand the word geo means gravity here, okay, so or the earth here, photo means light here. So rest of the thing is you can frame the sentence growth in the direction where the sunlight is coming, okay, or the movement in whichever direction the sunlight is coming. That was phototropism. Here the growth is happening, the movement of a plant body is happening in the direction of gravity. So which part of a plant body is moving that way? Root. That's why we say root is positively phototropic, whereas shoot always grows opposite direction of the gravity or ground, right? So that's why we say shoot is negatively geotropic. Okay, fine. So now coming to the next aspect, hydrotropism. So how do you define here movement or growth? Okay, so movement in response to water. So what is the stimuli here? Water. So whichever the direction water is there, in that direction the plant part will try to move or grow, right? So that is what our hydrotropism. So if I ask you a question, which part of the plant is positively hydrotrophic? Obviously root. So we pour water to a plant, right? Where do we pour the water? Majorly to the ground, right? Because the roots are the one majorly absorbing water, right, for the photosynthesis or for the growth. So obviously the roots will follow, okay, that direction in which water is rich in the soil. Okay, roots would grow in that direction where water is rich in the soil. Okay, so that's why we say roots are positively hydrotrophic, we say. Positively hydrotrophic, whereas shoot is negatively hydrotrophic. So shoot is growing opposite to the water flow which is happening in the ground, isn't it? So that's why shoot is negatively hydrotrophic, whereas root is positively hydrotrophic. Very important. So now coming to next aspect, you have something like thigmotropism. Okay, so thigmo in the sense touch here. So growth in response to touch, growth towards touch, or growth or movement of a plant towards touch, in response to touch, anything you can write. So that is thigmotropism. You must have seen many plants, right? So if you have a money plant in your house, you can observe, right? So the stem of a money plant will go and grow around the support. If you are giving a support, okay, a stick or a bamboo shoot or a thread, when you tie up as a support, you know, the stem would coil around the support and it will start growing in that direction. So here the stem is very much sensitive to the touch. What do you mean by touch here? Touch is that support that you have given. Okay, support can be a stick, support can be a rope, support can be a thread, whatever it is. Okay, so that support, in whichever the direction the support is there, you know, along that direction the growth of a shoot is happening, or the growth of a small stem or tendrils are happening, isn't it? Say if you observe this picture, see, if you look at this picture, see these are what we call tendrils, okay, small tweaks which coil around the support is what we mean by tendrils. Say I'll show you the visual also, how the tendril is growing along a support, okay. Look at this visual here, see this small stem is growing along a support, right? So this is how, as and when you provide a particular support, you know, the plant body will try to grow. See, it is growing along this rod, so it's moving along the rod, right? So that is what we mean by thigmotropism here, and which is positively thigmotropic. Okay, so if you ask me what part is positively thigmotropic, you can say tendrils. Tendril in the sense the small and very delicate stem is called as tendril here. Okay, so you can say tendril or stem is positively thigmotropic. Okay, and roots negatively thigmotropic, you can say. Okay, sometimes roots also can grow along the support only, but then in general what we say is the root is negatively thigmotropic. Okay, yes, you can write the roots, you know, negatively thigmotropic, right? So this is all about thigmotropism here. So now coming to the last type of tropic movement, that is you know, chemotropism. Very interesting tropism, chemotropism. So the growth towards chemicals, movement or growth towards chemicals is called as, you know, chemotropism. So here you might be wondering which part of a plant body might grow towards the chemicals, might get attracted towards the chemicals. There is one part which is called as a pollen tube. Okay, so here growth of pollen tube is example, growth of pollen tube. Okay, so what is this pollen tube, how does it grows, all these details you will understand in how do organisms reproduce, but here I will give a very brief introduction. Okay, so imagine there is a plant body inside a flower. I am talking about flower. This is a part which is there inside a flower. So here you have something called egg. Okay, egg, right? And here you will have something called you know, pollen grain. Okay, right? Pollen grain has got you know, male germ cell. So this is called as male germ cell. Okay, say usually when male germ cell comes and meets this egg, you know, the combination happens and the new plant cell will grow. I mean, the seed formation takes place. Okay, so now the thing is, male germ cell must go and meet this egg, right? So if it has to go and meet this egg, you know, how does it grow? This will grow out as a tube towards the egg. Okay, so there forms a tube towards the egg. Through the tube, the male germ cell will start moving. Okay, through the tube only, the male germ cell will start moving. So what makes the tube to grow from here to here? There are some chemicals here. Near the egg, there are some chemicals. Those chemicals will attract this pollen grain. Okay, so it is those chemicals which are making the tube to grow, and through the tube, this guy is coming and meeting this egg inside a flower. This whole thing happens inside a flower actually. Okay, so this is how the plants reproduce, right? So flower is the one which is turning into seed, right? So when this guy goes and meets this egg, seed formation happens. But if this guy to go and meet here, you know, there must form a tube, and that tube itself we will call it as a pollen tube. And what is making pollen tube to grow is the chemicals which are there near the egg. Okay, so this is the example of growth towards the chemicals. Okay, and this kind of growth is very much essential for a plant body. This should happen during the time of reproduction actually. Okay, so this is the best example for chemotropism. Okay, so growth of pollen tube is what we call it as positively chemotropic. So this is positively chemotropic. Okay, positive chemotropism it is. And what do you mean by a negative chemotropism? You can observe negative chemotropism. You can observe negative chemotropism. Okay, with roots sometimes. With roots. You know what? If the soil is too much contaminated with chemicals, the root will try to grow away from those chemicals actually. Okay, so the roots is a very important and interesting phenomena, right? The roots will not try to grow in the direction where harmful chemicals are there in a soil. The root will instead try to grow in the other direction where chemicals are not there. Okay, so that means here growth is happening away from the chemical, right? So that is a negative chemotropism. Sometimes you will observe with roots. Okay, so this is all about the different types of tropic movements.